This video is a full guide how you can reframe your negative thoughts. Reframing is a technique that psychologists and coaches are probably using the most in any session, coaching session or therapy session. And it's basically about changing your perspective and reframe. So you put your thoughts and what you're thinking about simply in a different and more helpful frame. That's why it's called reframing. An example. You maybe notice, I am depressed again. That's a certain frame, a certain thought you're having. And you could reframe that and, for example, think, well, everybody has their ups and downs and today is mine. Or I had a client, he felt often very sick right before work when he had to actually go to work. So he even had to choke. He felt very sick physically. And we talked about this in the first session. And at some point I said, well, it feels like you have a very good connection to your body. And then he laughed, it lighted up the mood. He was like, I guess that's right. At least we could look at it this way. And then on top of that, I said, well, it seems like this is a thermostat. We can have very great feedback over the next weeks how it's going, because you have immediate feedback with your body, right? It's like telling us, it's like a compass, whether we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction. And then again, he said yeah, well, that's right, actually. And you could see in his face how his attitude changed, because the last months he felt helpless. He didn't know what to do anymore. And suddenly, by phrasing it that way, you have a good connection to your body, and we can use this just like a compass, and we see over the next weeks when we're going in the right direction and we're going in the wrong direction. It gave him this feeling of, I actually have power over that. I have control over that. I can do something about that. And I didn't neglect all the negativity and the stress that he's experiencing, but I was adding a new layer of perspectives that were more helpful to then start working together. I reframed it in a sense. Last example, you're having tooth pain, and you need to go to the dentist. You're like, oh damn, I hate this, my tooth is hurting. Well, you could, for example, on top of that think, well, at least I'm in the 21st century. This was horrible 500 years ago. It's at least a little bit better nowadays. They have more, better tools and all like that, better medicine and whatnot. And on top of that, I'm insured. If you are, I'm living in Germany. Most people are here insured. And then, well, at least I don't need to pay anything for that. Or I pay always so much money to the insurance. At least now I get something back. You could reframe it in that way. And maybe though, with this last example, I didn't really fully catch you. And you were like, yes, I get it with the insurance, and 500 years ago, it was more painful. But still, if my tooth hurts, it's painful. We cannot change anything about that. And now here's the important thing. If you want to reframe to anybody else, it can easily come across as toxic positivity. And you're just trying to suppress the negativity. Oh, tooth pain is not a bad thing, and you have insurance and whatever. So what you really want to make sure, if you reframe to somebody else or to yourself, is that you first of all make sure that the person you're talking to has the feeling that you understood him or her. And then you can introduce a reframing. If you do it immediately, it often comes across weird, like toxic positivity, like the person doesn't really understand you. It's also very dangerous if you do this, for example, in coaching sessions too early. It feels like, oh, my coach doesn't understand me, he doesn't get what I'm talking about. And it's the same with yourself. If you have some pain, for example, you're depressed, and you just say, oh, I'm just happy. It's too fast, and you don't believe it, and it feels like you're trying to pretend something that you're actually not. So you want to also be compassionate to yourself and be like, hey, I have pain right now, and it's not fun. I get it. And on top of that, and then you can reframe it. If you talk with somebody else, for example, the tooth, understand them, listen to them closely and honestly, and you will develop some empathy, and you will say things such as like, hey, I understand that this is painful. I also once had tooth pain, and I'm sorry to hear that. Like, this is really shitty. and then you can introduce a reframing. But at least, I mean, imagine we would be in like 500 years ago. Like this would be horrible. At least we're in the 21st century. Yeah, you're right. Do you have insurance? Yeah? Well, at least you have insurance. Yeah, you're right. So that's important. Understand them first and then do the reframing. And also understand yourself first before you reframe. Honor your pain that you're having. Now, if we dig into the science of reframing, there are two different types of reframings. I want to quickly explain them. One is called reframing the meaning. And the example is your boss is overly controlling all the details, all the nitty-gritty details, and you could reframe the meaning of that by saying, well, at least I'm not going to do any mistakes because I'm going to make sure that my details are on point because I know my boss is controlling everything. So you reframe the meaning by itself, you put it in a positive way. Though you could also reframe the context. So reframing the context is the other opportunity. Here in the same example, when your boss is very nitty-gritty observing the details, you maybe don't need to reframe that by itself. Maybe that's shitty, but maybe that is helpful in a different situation. That's why it's called reframing the context. So you could say, well, if at some point an external auditor is coming around, I'm sure we don't have to worry about anything because it's going to be on point. This is a different strategy, see? You don't try to reframe your situation with your boss, but you at least put it in a different context. Well, this will be helpful if we are in a different context, and we are maybe at some point. I hope that was understandable. So reframing the meaning and reframing the context. So also reframing is a skill you need to work on. So if you have some thoughts that you would like to reframe, write them down and think, hey, can I reframe the meaning of that? Right now here in the situation? Can I maybe reframe the context? So this is maybe helpful in another context at some point. And then you can think about that. Because reframing is really like a muscle in your brain. You learn that, and the more you train that, the bigger this muscle gets and the easier it is for you to actually come up with a reframing and think about it from a more helpful perspective. Another couple of exercises just so you train your muscle a little bit. Let's say you're driving with your car, but then there's a red light, so you have to stop. But right in front of you, there is another car, and the red light turns green, so you can start driving. But the car in front of you, he's kind of like not attentive. He's not actually starting to drive, and you actually even have to horn to just give him the hint, like, "Hey, man, it's green. We can drive now." And this could make you angry. Now, I want you to think about what could be a reframing here. How could you reframe that in a positive way? Well, an example could be, for example, well, everybody is sometimes not attentive, and so am I. This is a reframing in a sense. Makes you feel more lighthearted and helps you to not be mad in the situation, because you notice, hey, I'm also sometimes not attentive. I'm also a human being just as he is or she is. Or I once had somebody I worked with, and he said, sometimes I'm like for days, like 3 days in a row, I kind of like feel like a robot. I'm just like doing my thing. I'm like productive, but I'm not really feeling. I'm not really slowing down and enjoying. I'm just like this robot for 3 days. And there are also different reframings you could suggest. For example, well, at least 3 days. That's better than 3 months. I mean, there are people walking through life that live like a robot for years. You're just talking about 3 days. True. Putting it in perspective. What would be something else that you could say here? You could say, well, I mean, you're like a robot for 3 days and you're productive. I mean, actually, that's quite appreciative because you're taking care of your life. You're managing your life and you're super focused for 3 days. I mean, there will be different times again when you can relax and slow down and more feel into it. But I mean, you're taking care of yourself. That's quite sweet of you. Also true. Putting it in a different frame. Because in this moment, the client is so much in the problem phase and space, like, oh, I'm like a robot. But oh well, I'm actually taking care of my life. Actually, 3 days is not too bad. Some people are there for 3 months or 3 years acting like a robot. Puts you already in a more lighthearted mood, and then we can still work on it. I'm not saying that it's not a big thing we need to work on. We can work on that if you want to. But we put you in a more lighthearted state, and from there on we can find better solutions. Yeah. A personal example, in the kindergarten, the first year in my kindergarten, I was actually not talking. I don't even remember that, to be honest, but I've been told the first year I didn't talk. But I always went home to my mother and then I told her what happened throughout the day. And also in the second year of my kindergarten, then I suddenly started to talk normally and I was much more outgoing. And you could reframe that as well. And you could, for example, say, well, this is a way to get to know the world. If you're a little child and you're observing it a lot, you get to know the world. And also, to be honest, it's quite sympathetic that you're not the kid who's just running in the crowd and being like, blah, 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 and talking all the time. You're a bit more sensitive. I like that, to be honest. And it also seems like you have quite a good connection to your security need. You know, you didn't feel secure maybe in the beginning, or just didn't have the capacity for that because there was so much going on, so many kids you can observe. And you had quite a good connection to that. And you listened to yourself. And when you were ready, then you opened up and talked. A lot of reframings here that you can introduce. Or last example, you're wasteful. Well, you can reframe that. Well, you are generous. And maybe he is or she is. And then we can still work on how generous do you really want to be, and when is generosity actually becoming wasteful, but taking on a new perspective and not being so stiff. This is what reframing is all about. Now, maybe you have some situations in mind now where you really think, Marco, you cannot reframe that. I'm maybe ill, maybe I have cancer, I don't know what it is. There are some situations where it's really hard to do any sort of reframing. And I want to introduce you a story that might help you a little bit to understand what my point on that is. It's a story about the horse and the farmer. So there has been a farmer. He was living close to a village and he had a horse. And one day the horse ran away. And everybody from the village came up to the farmer and said, oh, your horse ran away. That's like really bad luck. We're sorry to hear that. You only have one horse and now it's gone. And the farmer said, maybe it's bad luck, but maybe it's good luck. And a couple of days later, the horse came back, and not only the horse came back, but the horse also brought 2 other wild horses with him. And he suddenly had 3 horses. And again, everybody from the village came up and said, wow, it's so good luck. You have 3 horses now. This is amazing. And of course it is. I mean, how could this be bad luck? And again, the farmer said, well, maybe it's good luck, yes, but maybe it's bad luck. Who knows? The people from the village were a bit confused, but they went back to the village and went on with his life. And a couple of days later, his son was trying to tame one of the wild horses. And one of the wild horses kicked his son off and he broke his leg. And again, everybody from the village came up and said, wow, this is bad luck. We're so sorry. Your only son has broken his leg. And again, the farmer said, maybe it's bad luck, but maybe it's good luck. We don't know. And a couple of weeks later, the military came around and they drafted young soldiers for the war. And they couldn't actually get his son because his leg was obviously broken. He couldn't get to war, so he had to stay at home. And again, everybody from the village came around and said, wow, you're so lucky. And again, the farmer said, maybe it's good luck, but maybe it's bad luck. Who knows? And in those situations, first of all, if those happen, for example, your son breaks your leg, what is positive about that? There's nothing positive about that. It's all negative. Or your horse ran away. Why should this be good luck? There's zero explanation why this could be good luck. But then still life turns out in a way where it's actually the other way around. And with that, I just want to share this message of you don't know what is going to happen. You have no clue. And the things that happen in life where you feel like this is the worst that ever happened to me, maybe this is even one of the greatest things that happened to you, looking backwards, and you simply don't know yet. Okay. Now, reframing is one tool that you put something in a different frame, in a different perspective. I'm also a big fan of asking yourself, how big is the frame? You know? I mean, you could talk about people who died in car accidents, and that's shitty, yes. And maybe we can reframe that, but we also can ask ourselves, how big do we want to make this message? My mother, for example, is very good at reading the newspaper and thinking about all the stuff that happened and the worries and the ways people die, and then she's overly focusing on that. And she even becomes anxious then when she's hopping in a car, or when she knows I'm driving somewhere for like 5-6 hours. She's like scared that something happens to me. And I'm not saying that she's wrong. She's totally right. It's dangerous. For example, car accidents, there's a high percentage compared to other ways people die. But how big do you want to make this? Do you really want to make this so big that you constantly worry about this as soon as you step into the car? And how small do you want to make this? So this is a big question when you go through life. For example, there's bad weather today. It's just cloudy. Yes, that's true. But do I need to focus on that? Do I need to think about this now 5 times during the day? Or am I just focusing on something else? Am I just thinking, well, great day to shoot a couple of YouTube videos. Perfect. The lighting is even better, because if there are clouds and then it's like sunny and then the cloud comes again and then the cloud leaves and it's more sunny, because I have windows right here, it's actually worse for the lighting because it's like always bright, dark, and that's actually suboptimal for the videos. So great, let me shoot some YouTube videos and let me not ruminate about the fact that the weather is shitty today. Let me make this a very tiny frame. And yes, maybe today I don't go hiking because the weather is shitty, but let me do something else instead. Let me go to the gym, to the sauna, let me shoot a couple of YouTube videos, and let's focus on the great instead of the shitty. Okay. Now, if you're too stuck to make any reframing and you think, oh, I cannot come up with something, this is stupid, I don't know what to do, here are a couple of things you could do. Take a nap. Go to bed and sleep. People are very grumpy and not in a good mood if they don't have enough sleep. Maybe you should just sleep over for it for a night. Simply take a break. Just take a break. Relax. Or simply do something different. Work on another task. Play the guitar. Go into nature. Write something. Do something different. Get yourself in a different headspace. Because people often are with their mind in this problem space. There are 2 spaces, the problem space and the solution space. And with the reframing, I'm trying to pull people sometimes more into this solution space, where they have this aha moment. But if you cannot drag yourself out of that, you maybe simply change what you're doing right now, take a break, do something else, sleep, to put yourself into a different and more neutral headspace. And then it's more easier to come up with new solutions. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about the idea of the growth mindset. You maybe heard of it, the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The fixed mindset goes the following way. Something happens in life and you're failing on something. Maybe you play tennis with a friend and you lose. Fixed mindsets would say, well, I'm bad at tennis. I'm a loser. I lost. That's just the way I am. I'm just not good at tennis. A growth mindset looks at it from a perspective of opportunity. Great, I lost at something, let me learn from that. Oh, this opponent is better than me, great, that's how I can learn, right? If I would win all the time, winning is a lousy teacher, what can I improve? Maybe ask him for advice. I noticed my weaknesses now, maybe let me work on that, let me get better. Let's actually get excited about the fact that I can learn something here and I am challenged. This is awesome. And this has nothing to do with me as a person of who I am. And if you have this growth mindset, your self-esteem is also higher. Because if you constantly think that you are bad, if you're losing at something, you have a bad grade in school or you lost a client at your business or whatever it is, and then you immediately take it personal and think, I am a loser. My business is falling apart because I lost one client. This is quite exhausting. And you're constantly doubting yourself. And if you can detach your own identity from your outcomes in life, and you more think, well, this is my behavior. It's not like I'm bad at tennis. I just maybe didn't play well today. I can change that. If you think it's you, I'm a loser, you cannot change anything about your personality, or it's very hard. So I challenge you to accept the growth mindset and think about the opportunities, what you can learn. And life is all about that, to learn and to grow. All right. Now let's actually comment below, and I want you to write down one common belief that you're having, and I want you to reframe that already, to come up with a fully reframed sentence that you believe, where you feel like, yes, that is actually true. That's not toxic positivity. I actually believe that, and it's a more helpful belief and an alternative perspective that helps me in life. Comment that below. If you're looking for some new reframings, also comment it below. Everybody can share, and let's do like a mastermind. Yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, also leave them below. But also, maybe we just personally talk. So if you're experiencing a challenge these days where you find yourself a lot in the thick of it and in the problem space, and you have a hard time looking at the positive side and reframing your negative thoughts, then maybe let's talk. There's a link below the video. You can just schedule a free talk with me. We can come up with a custom strategy, come up already with a couple of solutions for free. And then at the end, we can talk about the possibility of moving forward. But there is a free call already, and this will be already valuable. So make use of that. Talk to you soon. Bye.